Hello and welcome to High Tales of History, a history podcast where two sisters get high and surprise each other with a story from history. I'm Laurel, the older sister.
Joined by Katie, the younger sister.
Here we are. Episode 89. We are in season 4. So season 4, episode 2. Welcome in. Love to see you. How you doing? How's your mama? How about sports? How about that sports team? How about it all? Sorry. Laurel, the older sister, has set a very bad big sisterly example and has gotten a little bit too stoned before starting the show. So we are off a flying start. Katie, how are you doing? I'm trying to hurry things along for you because you do not feel well.
We're here, man. I am the Bayern of this relationship. I'm going to pull through with flying colors. Might even have a 5-0 victory like I did last week. So, no big deal.
Oh, just pulling it out that back pocket there and giving it all you've got. So I appreciate you being here. We were trying to push off the episode as much as we could so that way Katie could feel better. And she's unfortunately still not feeling better.
I mean,
I'm so sorry. She's
like, my sore throat's better. Yeah, my sore throat's better, but people are counting on us, man. You can't just take a sick day. It just doesn't work like that.
Well, you know what? I'd be perfectly happy with doing an episode by myself. I can do it, and I have done it before. But people don't like those episodes as much as they like the ones with they don't get as many listens. So it's okay. That's I don't mind. Sad. They don't. It's better when there are two. Is really what that comes down to.
Yeah.
And if they're here for the sisters, they want us both together. And
it has nothing to do with you, Katie. You're actually trash, but there needs to be another person here.
That's what I'm saying. You have to bring that second person and all your particular energy to the scene because otherwise it just doesn't have the same flavor. So I appreciate you.
I am nothing if not the umami of this podcast.
That's what I'm going to call you from now on. Umami Katie. There she is. Well, I'm so glad that you're here. It's really good to see you despite how you're feeling. I'm so sorry about that. But we're so glad that y'all are with us tonight. Yeah. Here we go. So Katie, what have you got for a stage? Got some Dayquil?
I've got some beef broth here. Oh, I should hide the brand. Oh, yeah. It's a beef broth, though. I'm not being sponsored, so I'm not giving that free sponsorship.
Give us that broth money, though.
I tell you what, though, that shit slaps, and it's one of the only, cupped noodles that I can have. So there's that.
We'll hawk some broth, guys.
I'm telling you.
We'll hawk your broth. Absolutely.
I will. I absolutely will. Definitely. I did take a half an edible, which hopefully will be kicking in here soon, so I don't feel like I got out of an MMA fight. But water. I also have water. So water, broth, half an edible, and sheer willpower.
Mm-hmm.
That's what we're going with today.
Coffee, sparkling water flavored, mojito flavored sparkling water.
Oh, naturally.
Which was not good until just now. And I can't tell if it's just because I'm that stoned. But I'm like, this water is actually good. Or if it just has grown on me and it's actually okay. But yeah. And then I think it was, I couldn't remember what the name of this was the other week. I kept saying purple party, gelato punch party. What gelato? And I knew that gelato was in there and I thought something about a party and it's party punch gelato is what that is. And I am having a party.
Just everyone, by the time this is out, actually, no. If you guys all listen immediately at midnight on Friday, pray for me, because that's the night that I'm going to see Slayer, and I have no idea how this is going to go.
Yeah. I hope you feel better for it. I know you've really been looking forward to it. So we're all going to keep a good thought for Katie. And yeah, if you're listening to this on the weekend of its premiere, then Katie will be at a metal festival and seeing Slayer, and
whether or not I'm in a wheelchair or not, it's another matter.
It'll be like Weekend at Bernie's. We'll just prop you up and then and then she'll hear it and then she dances.
Right. Well, and that's the thing, right? The funny thing is people already stare at me right now while I'm there because, I mean, as you know, I have a face covering that I wear right now because I'm photosensitive.
Mm-hmm.
So obviously, it's really hard to watch a concert if you're having seizures. So I cover it. But dude, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to Gorilla Glue googly eyes on it, I think, because I think that would be so freaking funny. People are gonna be like,
Yes,
what the hell? And I'll be
please,
like,
please do.
it's better than just sitting there looking like Murdoch. Matt Murdock, right? Daredevil? Okay, good. I didn't screw that up.
It's
Half of our
perfect.
listeners would have left. But, well, because it's like a face mask, but it's like a memory foam one because it blocks out all the light. And that sucker works, let me tell
Yes,
you.
yeah.
$13 on Amazon. Best $13 I've ever spent.
I've also spent those same $13. Yep.
I so
So
hope that while people are listening to this, I'm getting punched in the mouth in a Slayer mosh pit. I so hope that's happening. With my googly eyes.
Can you put like maybe some eyelashes on
I
them
thought about that.
or
Do you
like
think I
bedazzle?
should?
Yeah. I mean, I think you should do whatever you want with it. I would like
Yeah.
googly eyes at least, but I
How
feel
about
like
this?
okay.
Because the googly eyes I already have purchased for this purpose. But what I think I'm gonna do is every band I see, I'm just gonna add shit to it. So at Louder Than Life, I'll have the googly eyes glued on. And then what's the next? We have another one. Oh, we'll be in Colorado at Red Rocks seeing Warjuna. Actually, I don't think I'll need it there. I hope not. It's kind of more like singer-songwriter of like old school Viking sagas. So I'm hoping they're not like strobing heavy. I could be wrong, but like the instruments are from like the Iron Age, so it's a different kind of metal. So like, I hope it's not like pow, 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 pow. But if it is, I'm gonna put those eyelashes on.
Well, we hope that you enjoy your show and see Slayer.
Yep.
And get knocked around a little bit, but not.
I was granted one pit run through. One pit. Blake said, if you hold to my belt loops, I will run you through one single pit, but that's it. He goes, you pick your song now because you're not getting another one. He's like, I'm not going to lose you in the. It's fair. Listen, it's fair. Also, someone who has seizures because of concussion issues probably doesn't need to be in there.
Yeah.
Just devastating emotionally. Looked at, I was like, Angel of Death. And he's like, you got it. He goes, that's it though. That's all you get. I know everyone was like, Raining Blood. I was like, no, I want Angel of Death because that's when the circle pit really gets going. It's going to look like a mixer. It's going to look like the wildebeest in Lion King. Looking forward to it.
Good. Enjoy yourself. Take those adventures.
I shall.
And be safe.
Safety first.
Safety first, yeah. And be safe because I'm the big sister and I want to make sure you're okay. All right, here we go. Bottle, leaf, grinder, shoot. Katie's a grinder. I'm a leaf.
You ready?
I am ready.
I've got medical history for you today.
Ooh.
But also with a bit of drama because there's next to nothing in my life I haven't done with a bit of flair. So, the history of human disease is probably about as old as the human race itself. Most likely. But I have no evidence to back that up. So that's why I said probably. Qualifiers. It probably, again, goes without saying that the advancements in medicine and treatments for disease are big moments in history. At least for this story, I assumed that they were. Before 1921, people with diabetes unfortunately did not live long. Not much was known about not only how the disease itself worked, but obviously how to treat it. You don't understand the disease, you can't treat it.
Right.
At the time, the most that could be done for a person with diabetes was to put the patient on a diet of extremely limited carbohydrates, which at most bought patients a few years of extra life. Not a long time. Ooh. Some even harsher diets prescribed as little as 450 calories a day, which led to some patients dying of starvation. Yeah.
Yeah, 450 calories. Yuck.
I have literally no idea how much that is.
So, most servings of things, and this is a huge generalization, are like 150 to 250 calories. And that's like a serving, right? So like the other night I was sharing a chocolate bar and it was just like a 12 square piece of dark chocolate.
Yeah.
I think it was like half of the bar was 250 calories. Or maybe the whole bar was. I don't know, but bar of chocolate, 250 calories. So if that helps put things in perspective, like
wow. Yeah, that's
let alone like if you had an actual meal and stuff like that. Like
you wouldn't have a meal, you'd have like a handful of something like throughout the day.
Yeah.
You would actually literally starve. That's terrible. Before we go any further, let's just go over diabetes real quick to make sure we're all on the same page. Diabetes is a chronic disease that occurs when the body cannot regulate its blood sugar levels. There are two types. Type 1 diabetes occurs when the pancreas produces little to no insulin in the body. Did I say type 1 or type 2?
You just said type 1.
Okay, good. Because, I read type 2, but then, hopefully said the right thing.
Oh, right. Yeah.
Girl. Type 2 occurs when the body becomes resistant to insulin and doesn't produce enough of it. So some of the symptoms one might, experience with this disease are frequent urination. They're very, very thirsty, constantly hungry. There's weight loss, vision changes, and fatigue. Diabetes also leads to further complications in life, such as heart disease, vision loss, kidney disease. It's very hard on the kidneys. You can get nerve damage from the lack of blood flow, I think, right? Okay. Skin and foot infections, which can lead to amputations, hearing loss, oral health issues, and I put it in there because the World Health Organization said so, and apparent sexual dysfunction.
Oh, okay.
I guess would
Vague,
make sense.
but apparent. Okay.
That's what I said. I was
sure. I'd take just about any symptom that they list with diabetes just because of how those
it
things
affects
function
everything.
and affects. Yeah.
Yeah.
Be like, oh, all right, sure.
What Laurel's telling you
I'm
is
not a
this is a
doctor.
big deal, this disease, which is why
Yeah.
this story is also a big deal.
I'm so excited about what we're going to find out.
You can probably guess.
Is this the development of insulin?
Yeah.
Okay, sweet.
Literally on the next bullet point, the discovery of insulin is probably one of the best things to happen for diabetics, short of finding a cure, because it's quite literally made living with diabetes possible. What you probably don't know is that the discovery of insulin was actually an accident. Most medical things are, whoops, who knew?
Yeah.
Why can't I have a happy accident like that in my life?
Happy accident. The Bob Ross of medical stuff. I just want a happy accident.
Right?
Just a little happy accident over here.
Who doesn't, man? Who doesn't?
Yeah. People are looking at a petri dish and they're like, wait a second.
I'm going to pause here for a moment and just say that the rest of my story, it contains a bit of animal testing. I'm not going to go into it and be like, this is what happened, but it is in there. It's unfortunately extremely common in medical discovery. It's not something I personally necessarily agree with, but we're here to talk about history honestly and completely.
Appreciate that.
Yep. And it's a regrettable part of it, but I just wanted to give everybody a heads up because I was cringing in times when they would, talk about it. So in 1889, two German physicians, Joseph von Mering and Oskar Minkowski, removed the pancreas from a healthy dog to study the role of the pancreas in digestion. As is probably not a surprise, several days after the dog's pancreas was removed, the doctors noticed flies feeding on a puddle of the dog's urine. Upon further testing of the urine, they realized the dog was secreting sugar in its urine, and therefore they had created a diabetic condition. And for the first time, the relationship between the pancreas and diabetes began to be understood. So that was yeah.
That's amazing. But
I know.
Those moments where you're just like, wait a second, that's weird. When you have a super smart brain and you're noticing things that don't make sense or the patterns don't add up. You're like, oh, that's something that's out of the ordinary.
Yeah.
That clues
especially
you
when you're researching
bigger.
something else.
Yeah, exactly. That's cluing you into something bigger that's going on. I think that's fascinating.
Fast forward a couple of decades, and on the morning of October 25th, 1923, Canadian clinician Dr. Fred Banting received a phone call that usually heralds the best day of a scientist's life. A Fred congratulating Banting for a Nobel Peace Prize. However, the newspaper headlines confirmed Banting's worst fear. The Nobel Prize had been awarded not just to him, but also to his boss, John James Rickard Jingleheimer Smith. No, sorry. Sorry. I shouldn't have done that. Maybe the edible's kicking in. Thank goodness, because these body aches are the worst. All right. You keep laughing. I want to keep talking. So John James Rickard MacLeod.
Probably. I don't know why I said that with
MacLeod. I think it's MacLeod.
It could be. I knew McLeod in high school was spelled that way.
Oh.
Not that means anything, but
fucking sure it does. It's now MacLeod. Professor of physiology at the University of Toronto. In a livid rage, Banting slammed down the phone and drove down to Toronto in such a blind rage that one onlooker recalls fearing it would end in violence. He was pissed. He was so
Oh
pissed.
no.
I know. So I'm going to leave you on that cliffhanger. We're going to go into other stuff.
Okay.
Frederick Grant Banting, born in 1891, so a couple of years after that first relationship with the pancreas and diabetes was established. He grew up on a small Ontario farm and was educated at local schools. He entered the Victoria College, the Divinity School of the University of Toronto, to study for ministry. Imagine that. After 3 semesters of art courses and no pre-medical preparation, he transferred to the university's medical school in the fall of 1912. His studies were interrupted by World War I. That is a thing that happened. He and the other students enlisted in the Royal Canadian Army Medical Corps in 1915. They were sent back to finish medical school in an accelerated 15-month program. They were like, we got to crank these bitches out. We need medics. Graduating in 1916 with a Bachelor of Medicine, Banting was sent overseas with the rank of captain.
Nice.
I know, he did pretty well for himself. After serving as a medical officer in a Canadian hospital in England, he was transferred to France with a field ambulance unit. In September of 1918, he was wounded and moved to the hospital in England. And for valorous conduct during the Cambrai campaign, he was awarded the Military Cross by the British government. Woohoo! He then returned to Toronto in the March of 1919 and joined the staff of the hospital for sick children as a resident in surgery. I think he was doing a lot of volunteering his time is kind of what it sounded like. In July of 1920, he opened up a general surgical practice in London, Ontario. Everywhere has a London, I've decided.
Yeah. Yeah.
Including England.
Yeah.
Maybe you've heard. This was 110 miles west of Toronto, just so everybody knows whereabouts we're at. While he was slow in developing, he took on a part-time position as a demonstrator at the local medical school. For nearly a year, he taught anatomy and physiology. Now, I know what you're thinking. Wait a second, doesn't this fucker, not really have a medical degree? Sure doesn't. Well, he was not qualified. I mean, he does. I'm sorry, that's not true. He has a bachelor, but he's not qualified to teach these topics, like anatomy and stuff like that. Yeah.
Yeah.
While he was not qualified to teach physiology, he convinced F.R. Miller, who was the head of the department, that he could stay ahead of his assignments to the students, basically saying, well, I'll be on time, it'll be fine, I'm very timely, I've got this. I don't know how that translates to teaching the actual subject, but what the hell do I know?
And I could be on time for a train, but I wouldn't know how to, engineer it.
Right, exactly. That's exactly right. I'm telling you.
What a strange thing. It's funny because you said that earlier about how they're like, we need doctors. Let's just turn these people into doctors. That's something that it always makes me laugh so hard when it comes to the end of the 19th century, early 20th century. Actually, the whole 19th century, really. But you get this and it kind of goes along also with the Industrial Revolution, which we talked about last week, the post Enlightenment, all these things that are kind of happening at this time,
right?
That people are like, I'm a scientist.
Yeah, they have little to no qualification, but they're like, I know what I'm doing, and you're like,
I know exactly how to do this. I read a couple books.
Yeah,
the gumption and audacity of people being like, I'm pretty sure I could drive this car around the world. I've never driven a car before. Cars are brand new. But I've watched somebody do it and I've read a book. It's fine.
How hard
could this be? Oh, the confidence and audacity. It just makes me laugh, because
have all the confidence of an early 19th century doctor.
I think that's merch. We have the confidence of we'll workshop that.
We will workshop that, but write that down.
Write it down, somebody. Write it down. I got my notebook here. Yeah, because they'd be like, I'm an archaeologist, and they just go out and go to bone digs. I've dissected an animal before. Pretty sure I'm a surgeon now. It's fine. And just all these different instances. And you can even go back. You can go back to any sort of point in history, but there are so many examples of it, even in our own episodes of things we've covered, where people are like, Yeah, they sort of went to school for 6 months and then they were a lawyer. Anyway, good good for you, 19th and early 20th centuries.
Yeah. I mean, we are talking about the discovery of a treatment of disease, so he didn't do too bad, but
Right. And then they did great stuff a lot of
yeah,
time. Not all, but then there'd be like these huge discoveries and there's like
yeah,
this big boom in this progress. And
yeah.
the people that were like, I actually have no idea
He
what I'm
pretty
doing.
much just has an associates, and you're like, what the hell?
Well, it's kind of like podcasters, right? You know, like we cosplay as historians. Right?
Oh God, yeah, like
But,
we know what we're doing. I mean,
mm,
I read about it.
I read about it. How hard can it be to teach something like this? I mean, come on. I'm a doctor.
Good times.
All right. I'm sorry.
So he's not qualified to teach it. He says, I'll be on time. I've got this. It also doesn't hurt that he assisted Miller with his experiments as well. So probably kind
No.
of sort of knew what he was talking about.
I just love the thought that he's on time for the train. He's gonna say like, I'm the engineer of this train. I know how everything works. And someone's like, yeah, we'll let you put a shovel of the coal in there, you know?
Yeah. To his
or the
credit,
firebox.
he's a good thinker because he put things together that nobody else did. So
Okay, I shouldn't be giving him a hard time. He's really saved a lot of lives here if this is the same
yeah,
person.
he does have help though. So hang in there
Okay.
because we have to get into that drama, girl. We have to get into that drama.
I'll sit down, I'll sit back. I'm gonna have a little smoke and then you keep
Hell
on.
yeah.
Yeah, thank
Hit
you.
it.
Okay.
So in 1920, Banting was prepared to lecture on the pancreas. And in an article that caught his attention, it was describing the relationship between diabetes and the pancreas, or pancreatic stones specifically. Basically, that they found, I'm really going to have to paraphrase because I didn't want to put all the science in here. The stones blocked a duct and they noticed the development of diabetes, basically. And they were trying to figure out the relationship between the pancreas and like what in the pancreas affects diabetes. The most spark noted, bullet pointed version of that experiment.
That was perfect. That's
Perfect.
all we needed to know. Yeah.
Heck yeah. You guys are doing great.
What in the pancreas?
Oh, exactly.
What in the pancreas is going on here?
I love that. Write that down. Banting, in all of his infinite wisdom,
Right.
all of his pancreatic knowledge, he got an idea that then the reason all the previous experiments failed to explain how diabetes worked was because digestive enzymes destroyed the secretion. That's what we know as insulin, is the secretion they're looking for, right? But they don't know what it is.
Sure.
They just know that there's something there. So he thinks the digestive enzymes were destroying that secretion they were going after when they were removing the gland. They were removing the whole pancreas, right?
Yeah.
So as they removed it, if you want a more detailed, in-depth, you can go check out how to remove a pancreas on like YouTube or something, because I'm going to not get into that medical stuff. Because I don't know how many people are squeamish, and I'm really trying to make this as palatable as possible for all of us.
Thank you, Katie.
Hey, I got you. F.R. Miller advised Banting to bring his idea to John James Jingleheimer Smith, to John James Rickard McLeod. Laurel says, I say McLeod, the professor of physiology. Oh my God, he actually knows physiology, unlike somebody else. And the department head at the University of Toronto. I'm sorry, why are we taking such shots at Banting, dude? Like, he's just trying to get something done. He has a little bit of like, I don't know how to say it. I wouldn't say like a spoiled brat, but he's very much like, hey, I did this too. I don't want to take away from what he did because he did some good shit. So, as anyone with diabetes will tell you.
Right, yeah. I don't know why I'm like shitting on him so much.
I know.
Or like, maybe no, I should say. Like,
sorry, Banting.
Sorry.
We're really here on your side, I promise you. We're just kind of those like really aggressive friends who love aggressively. So he's talking to John James Jingleheimer Smith over here at the University of Toronto.
Yeah.
Who is the leading authority on carbohydrate metabolism. So he was in a position to provide Banting with a research facility to test his proposal to those previous experiments as to why they failed. So McLeod came to Toronto in 1918, and after 15 years as a professor at Western Reserve University in Cleveland, Ohio, and he was the president of the American Physiological Society during the year of the discovery of insulin. So he kind of bounces back and forth between America and Canada. He concluded during his experiments that there was an internal secretion of the pancreas and believed that it might never be separated in a pancreatic extract.
Interesting. Okay, sorry, I was trying to like follow the
Yeah, so
the science
he
with
thinks
that
that
memory.
they'll never be able to get that secretion, which what we know is insulin now,
Mm-hmm.
out of the pancreas to treat diabetes. He doesn't believe that that's going to be possible. Basically, he's like, well, he's drawing conclusions, like saying, like, yes, we know that this is sort of how this works and all that, but doesn't know what to do about it. So,
Right.
have Banting here. He says, I think I know why it's not working. I bet we can do it. Spark note.
Perfect. Yep. Thank you. Appreciate it.
I'm here for you, man. I've summarized all of the Lord of the Rings for somebody. I can summarize my story.
Yeah. Nice one.
After only 4 months of arriving in London, Ontario, Banting visited MacLeod for the first time on Monday, November 7th of 1920. MacLeod, knowledgeable about the literature, was skeptical, and it's easy to understand why he was not impressed with Banting or his idea. Banting was at a marked disadvantage in facing MacLeod. He had no advanced degree, no honors, no publications, experience in research, or teaching at a private practice or surgery. Except for his work in the army, he had virtually no credentials. So I just spent an entire paragraph shitting on him. Poor Banting. So not qualified.
Oh, no, he's not.
Yeah.
No,
Don't
not.
worry. With sometimes great minds aren't the most qualified. Look at me. So Banting met twice more with MacLeod. Whether it was the persistence, the boundless enthusiasm, or the possibility of reliable results with the new glucose methods on small volumes of blood, MacLeod may have considered Banting's proposal worth thinking about. Finally, having cautioned Banting about the time it would take and the likelihood of negative results, MacLeod agreed to provide laboratory space. So here we go. Having spent the summer of 1921 working in MacLeod's laboratory with final year student Charles Best, they were testing the effects of pancreatic extracts on diabetic dogs. Banting had felt confident enough early in the following year to trust his preparations on a human patient. But when the 14-year-old Leonard Thompson was injected on January 11th of 1922 with material prepared by Banting and Best, the result was not success. Nothing like bad happened, but it just didn't
Oh,
happen. It just didn't do
okay. I was
anything. He
like,
didn't get
oh
better.
no.
Yeah.
Okay.
Although the high levels of sugar in Leonard's blood fell, he continued to produce those poisonous ketones and suffered an adverse immune reaction due to the impurities in the preparation. He doesn't die, though. I know, I'm sorry. I made it sound like nothing happened. He did react. He doesn't die.
Right.
But he
Okay.
does, well, I think he does with diabetes. But anyway, I'm sorry. I'm really not trying to make this sad. We're treating a disease here, okay?
I know.
It takes time.
Poor kid. Oh.
I know. But they're trying to save everybody's lives, you know? They're
Yeah.
thinking that this is going to help. And they did. So they did see a result, though. They lowered the blood sugar. So that's a start. 2 weeks later, he was injected again with fresh preparation, which not only reduced his blood sugar levels, but abolished the production of ketones and crucially did not trigger the immune response. So, what changed in those 2 weeks? The answer is that the second preparation that was made not by Banting and Best, but by their colleagues, Jane Collip, who's a biochemist, he hangs out with John Jacob Jingleheimer McLeod Smith. I'm sorry. I really need to stop that. He hangs out with MacLeod. Well, I just don't want to confuse everyone. It's John... shit, what is it? It's... Now I've confused myself. John James Rickard MacLeod.
Okay.
Jingleheimer Smith.
Holy shit, his name is my name too. It's crazy. It's crazy. I wanted to make that joke like the first time you did it.
I'm so glad you did. This is why,
So I was just
listen,
waiting
if
for you to
this
say it
bothers you, maybe this podcast isn't for you because this is how it is. But yes, so James Collip hangs out with MacLeod Jingleheimer Smith.
Gotcha.
So Collip is a biochemist who used alcohol to remove the toxic impurities from the secretion, right, that preparation, and isolated insulin as the active agent. They didn't know what it was called yet, but that's what it was.
Hell yeah.
On February 6th, 6 more patients were treated. Oh, not February 6th. I'm sorry. Your girl is sick and working on it. In February, 6 more patients were treated with favorable results with that same preparation that Collip helped. A series of clinical studies followed that defined the biological effects of insulin and established guidelines for its clinical use. W.R. Campbell and A.A. Fletcher were the clinicians, right? So, like doctors, but like working in experimental settings, we shall say, assigned to work out many of the problems utilizing the therapy. So, we've done this. You streamline it, make it effective, make it better. Banting at this point had little to do with the writing of this paper that they were working on or the clinical work, and it reported that no role in the ongoing experiment or clinical research. He and Best, because he and Best were working together in the laboratory, provided extract and, depancreatized dogs and did other surgical work required for the experiments by the clinicians. They had to learn all they could and quickly about the substance and its clinical impacts on diabetes, and they had to develop the production of much larger quantities of the extract. McLeod organized the ongoing research. Results were not discussed with Best or Banting, nor were plans for future experiments. Best and I became technicians under McLeod. Like all the others, Banting wrote bitterly. Bitter is an excellent word for him. He's very bitter.
Ooh, okay.
But I also understand that, like, it was his idea.
Uh-huh.
All of this began with his idea. So I think he just didn't feel like he was credited towards it. But what I've learned about science and scientists, and I've seen Oppenheimer.
How hard can science be? I mean,
right?
honestly.
What I was going to say is that was literally like 5 teams of people.
Right, yeah.
Yes,
yeah.
it was the guy whose name... Oh, it's Oppenheimer. Dumbass. Played by Cillian Murphy. Blake's one and only love. Next to me. Actually, I think Cillian might win over me. But anyway. It's that Thomas Shelby voice. I think it just gets it.
Yeah.
But it's a team. He had how many people helping them? Mathematicians, physics, not physicians. What do you call those? Physics people. Physics people.
Physicists.
Yeah, physicists. Thank you. Jiminy Christmas.
No,
I was like, I know this answer.
Panic.
Yeah, so physicists. I mean, it was people from all over.
Yeah.
It takes an army, right? Because there's somebody who knows. So the physiology, like take it, McLeod knows physiology, whereas Banting doesn't, but he has this great idea. I think I know this is what's doing it. His idea leads to this whole discovery, this whole ability of treatment, and to this day is still being used. You know? I think Banting is a little bit self-righteous, even though he had a great idea, but I think it really does take a team. And I hate it and lots of scientists do this. And like, remember your fossil story? Everybody wants like that credit.
Right.
You know, and it's like, man, don't let your ego get in the way. You would do more good than you have.
This might be a really idiotic question, or like just a really naive question, maybe, but
I doubt it.
I wonder how that works. Cause like, and I've read plenty of scientific journals in my time with like my old career, what I used to do. And I'm trying to think of like how the authorship goes on that.
They're usually credited in alphabetical order.
Right. Like
that's
et
it.
al, you know, like
yes, that's it.
Smith, Johnson, et al, you know.
Unless they specifically state like discovered by, worked by, but that would be them arguing over not a qualifier, but a preposition, adjective, what adjective?
Verbs,
but
adverbs, why not? I mean,
I get
automatopoeias.
Okay. I'm just saying it would be a bit silly. You might as well just credit everybody, because anybody who had a hand in the work. Remember the dude that wrote all those textbooks credited his cat? Credit everybody, because So Banting, he's bitter. He's all angry about it. Banting had been living and working under intense emotional distress. During March of 1922, his attendance at the laboratory fell off. The only way he could overcome his despair at night was to drink himself to sleep. Sometimes, wait for it, sometimes stealing the 95% alcohol from the laboratory. What? How did you not go blind? He writes later that I do not think there was one night during the month of March of 1922 when I went to bed sober. All right, buddy.
I'm surprised you're not dead,
He
mate.
probably diluted it, but he still stole it to get drunk. So
That's
I know.
you just might need some help and some
A hug.
and a hug. Yeah, maybe get sober. That's
Yeah. Well, I don't think he like continues that because that was like it was a bad time is the impression I got. I think he does
Okay.
better, so we're just gonna like pretend that he does. So in
Okay.
April of
Fingers crossed.
1922, the Toronto team prepared a paper summarizing all the work to date. The authors were Banting, Best, Collip, Campbell, Fletcher, and McLeod, Jingleheimer Smith, and E.C. Noble, whoever the fuck that is. He never comes up again. For the first time, they gave a name to the extract. Insulin. Ta-da! They did not know, and they spelled it insulin with an E, so I guess the E drops off after a while.
Like insulin, almost.
Yeah,
Insulin with
yeah,
an E.
that was
Okay.
how they first spoke about it in this paper. They did not know that insulin had been proposed earlier. All the authors agreed that McLeod, Jingleheimer Smith, who was the member of the host society, would present the paper at Washington, D.C. at the meeting of the Association of American Physicians on May 3rd of 1922. So who deserves the fame and tributes for the discovery of insulin? Here we go.
Oh
The
man.
press would have something to say about that by the way it covered the story. After the May 3rd announcement, Banting, the country surgeon that he is, Best is but a mere student, and they dissolved into the background and were replaced by McLeod and the clinicians. During the summer of 1922, the circumstances changed. Collip was gone, like moved on to other things. He's not at the school anymore because you do like 10 years and shit. Like nobody killed him
Right.
that I know of. Best was working as a director at the Connaughts insulin production to help pay for medical school, as you do. And McLeod, Jingleheimer Smith, was doing research at the Marine Biological Station in St. Andrews in New Brunswick. Whew, what a mouthful. So with Best and Collip and McLeod away from the college, Banting became the go-to man on the scene. And basically was struggling to produce good insulin to make it a better product.
Mm-hmm.
He got to know Clowes, Clowes, and others in the scientific world outside of Toronto during this period when the clinical phase overshadowed the experimental physiology handled by McLeod. So Banting achieved sudden and spectacular fame. The entire scientific world joined to hail him with lavish praise, which I'm sure he loved. He was made an honorary member of the major scientific and medical societies of the world. Other honors, prizes, medals, and awards pursued him in rapid succession. No, nothing has ever pursued me except like a sense of adventure, maybe?
Yeah, there you go. That's positive.
Positivity. Banting actually appeared on the cover of Time magazine for August 27th of 1923. In the expectation by the editors, he was the logical choice for the Nobel Peace Prize later that year. So Banting, it's worth noting, I'm about to shit on him again, I'm sorry, but he did it to himself. He was shy, unsophisticated, and ordinary, a country boy who hated speeches, banquets, and formal dress. He hated being interviewed to the point of being rude and insulting reporters. He was at first an indifferent speaker with a stumbling delivery, whose ineptitude seemed to be all the more noticeable when he was preceded or followed by, whichever, his McLeod, basically.
Right. His.
Because he had an excellent delivery. He had a very well-known practice, and his public speaking was phenomenal. So Banting, in time, started to practice his public speaking, improved, and became more businesslike than eloquent. So he still never quite got it down, but it's just who he is.
Mm-hmm.
Banting hated McLeod and felt that he had no right whatsoever to have any claim on the discovery of insulin, let alone share a Nobel Prize for this achievement. Yet, had it not been for McLeod offering him space in his laboratory where he could explore his ideas to test the anti-diabetic effects of pancreatic extracts, Banting might very well have remained a struggling general practitioner in the provincial Ontario with a failing private practice and never have received that fateful phone call in the first place. Just gonna put that out there. I mean, that's why I was like making the point earlier. It's a team effort. It's always a team effort. You know, it's not just you. It's everybody who supported you and who's behind you and helped you. So remember that when you get to the winner's circle.
There's no I in team.
Yeah, but there is a me. So while controversy surrounded who should get the credit for this discovery, the newspaper headlines of the time were clear about one thing. Insulin was a miraculous cure for diabetes. Not quite true, but I love the enthusiasm.
Mm-hmm.
Delighted as they were, diabetes clinicians knew that it was nothing of the sort. Having type 1 diabetes, the person that was writing this, they give a lot of, they're diabetic. So I thought that was really interesting. And I left it in because I like hearing from people who experience situations because I think it does us all good to have a firsthand account. The author writes that having diabetes type 1 for myself for just over 10 years, I think I know what they mean. And he talks about just how they observed that the insulin transformed people's lives, but the condition is still fatal. It's still chronic. Mm-hmm. You have to keep treating it. It's not just gone. Mm-hmm. So it could now be managed, but there was still the potential for long-term serious health complications, as anyone living with diabetes knows now, because just because you're treated with insulin doesn't mean all those other complicating factors I listed with the heart disease and sexual dysfunction and everything sandwiched in between, still can affect you. So, until the discovery of insulin, diabetes was a certain death sentence. Unable to make insulin, a hormone which is normally produced in the pancreas, diabetic patients could not use the sugar from their diet as fuel and so gradually slid into a fatal coma brought on by rising levels of toxic metabolic byproducts called ketones in their blood. Doctors could only look on helplessly, unable to do anything other than just put their patients on a starvation diet to delay the inevitable outcome. Little wonder that when insulin was first used to successfully treat patients in 1922, doctors were delighted.
Right.
Yeah. It kind of, nobody ever gets along after that. They just kind of go on, split off, and everybody starts developing insulin. That's what they do. And some used cow insulin, some used pig, some used other kinds. I think cat was on there. And they kind of just go on to do that, but they are still both credited with that Nobel Peace Prize. So they still have to share. Diabetes affects 422 million people worldwide, with 1.5 million deaths occurring directly attributing to that disease. So just to give you a scope, the magnitude of this discovery and of the life-changing effects of it. Again, not a cure, but still a big deal. Insulin now comes in many forms, and thanks to decades of research with people with diabetes, they have many options to choose from. And like I said before, while it might not be a cure, it is definitely a lifesaver. And there's the history of how insulin was discovered.
Wow, what a cool bit of medical history. Thank you.
Glad you enjoyed it.
We are at the break in between the stories. Katie there with Banting and McLeod and the co-discovery of insulin. Even though there is a bit of bad blood there, we are very thankful for their contribution to medicine. We're so happy to have you here, and we hope that you are happy to be here and that you've been enjoying yourself in the Smoke Circle so far. If so, please make sure that you click the follow, the subscribe, whatever that button may be on the platform on which you're listening. That way you are notified for all of our new episodes going forward. And while you're there subscribing, please make sure to rate and review. That is the best way that you can help support our little show for free. It helps us move up the charts and get seen by more history lovers like yourself. If you want to support us in a different way and get access to more content, like bonus episodes, historical cooking videos, historical movie nights, head on over to Patreon and join the Best Buds Club. We'll have a half-baked episode coming out next Friday, which I will be talking about at the end of my segment, as well as a historical movie night in which we're watching the movie The Catcher Was a Spy about Moe Berg, who was a baseball catcher who did some clandestine activities for the American government during World War II. You can even join our Patreon Best Buds Club at a free level, so you can at least sign up and hang out with us and poke around and see what's going on over there. And of course, we're on social media, on Instagram at High Tales of History and on TikTok at High Tales of History Pod. Please follow us over there too. Say hi, interact with us. Over there we have news about the show, but we also have little historical videos. We call them History One-Hitters, and we would love for you to join us there too. All of our social media accounts and our Patreon information is all included in our show notes. All right, we're going to get back to the show now into part 2, where we're talking about one of Hollywood's most iconic and most beloved actors, Audrey Hepburn. And did you know that she had a hand in the Dutch resistance during World War II? Are you intrigued? Then let's puff pass it on to part 2. We're going to dive in. We're going to dive into the early life of an iconic figure whose elegance and grace captivated the world.
You should have interviewed me if you were going to do a story about me. Sorry, just kidding. Anyway, carry on.
Like, how dare you not interview me? Audrey Hepburn.
Oh, get in.
Beyond the glamour and the glitz, Audrey Hepburn's early years, that's what we're going to focus on, hold a story of courage and resilience that I find really inspiring. She is one of my favorite people in Hollywood, of the silver screen, of the golden age of Hollywood.
You should have told me, man.
really
I could have put on my Audrey Hepburn shirt. Could have celebrated, man.
Well,
instead, I've got Wolverine.
He's kind of like Audrey Hepburn in his own special way.
Very hairy Canadian version.
Right, exactly. Yeah, it's fine. So I want to do like the Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade thing with the fedora, like the fedora goes on, and he looks up, da 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 da, kwacha, da da da, kwacha, da da da. Right? He's on the boat. Probably use more of the theme song than I probably am legally allowed to use. But yeah. Anyways, we got another great hat. In her most iconic role of Holly Golightly, one of her most iconic roles, she's got that long black cigarette holder. Right, she's this fancy hat. So we're gonna light Holly Golightly's cigarette. She lights a cigarette. Boom. 16-year-old Audrey Hepburn having her first cigarette in her little Dutch village of Velp on April 16th, 1945. It's on this day that her family, not hearing the constant sounds of shelling over their village and smelling cigarette smoke, come out of their hiding place in a cellar to find Allied troops liberating their village. And in her excitement, Audrey asks one of the passing soldiers for a cigarette. And she's never smoked before, but she's just like, I just want to have a cigarette. That sounds like a great idea. And so she's like coughing and like sputtering on it. But smoking henceforth was always associated with happiness and freedom for her. That's how she talked about smoking, was like, she's like, oh yeah, no, this like transports me back to being liberated in the war.
Yeah. I mean, that's kind of like in Ratatouille when he eats the ratatouille and he's like sent back to his little French village, right. The little weird Igor that he is, but like Ego. I know his name is Ego, but I'm just saying he's a very Igor-esque character. Yeah.
Right. Exactly. And these are the sort of things that tie our memories to these certain events here that you're doing. And over the past 5 years before this first cigarette, she and her family had been enduring the horrors of Nazi occupation. I mean, take your pick.
I was say, when you said 1945, I was like, oh, rough times to be in that side of the world.
Mm-hmm. Yes. They were hungry and therefore malnourished. Some of her family members and friends had been executed or sent to concentration camps. But there's like this determination, even as a child, in a young Audrey that shone through. And then she wanted to do what she could to help the Dutch resistance. And that's what we're going to be talking about.
Oh, yeah.
As a freedom fighter. Born on May 4th, 1929 in Brussels, Belgium, Audrey Hepburn was originally named Audrey Kathleen Roustan. Her parents were Joseph Roustan, a British banker who came from a line of minor nobility. Get out your monocle, folks. And Ella van Heemstra, a Dutch baroness. Fancy, right? The fancy.
I was say she's bougie.
What's not fancy, however, is that her parents originally were German nationalists and therefore pro-Nazi. Audrey never was, because she's growing up in this world of Nazis being the fucking worst, right? So she's not, but her parents in their early days were.
Didn't you say like some family got sent to concentration camps?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Right.
Make it make sense, man.
Right. Girl. Make it make sense, indeed. And the context will all come together here in a little bit, but yeah, I know. The Nazis aren't good for anybody. When she was 6 years old, her father, Joseph, walked out on the family. She never spoke to him again. And only a few days after her 11th birthday, those fucking Nazis invaded the Netherlands, and the whole country was then brought under Nazi occupation. It's during this time that her mother, Ella, moves the family to the city of Arnhem, where Audrey continued her education at the Arnhem Conservatory, and it was there that she fell in love with ballet and pursued the art along with acting. But due to Nazi restrictions, ordinary parts of life became an act of defiance, and ballet gave her this refuge from the daily terrors of living in Arnhem. The harsh winters were particularly terrible, as shortages of food and fuel meant that her family often went hungry and cold. The presence of Nazi troops and a constant fear of bombings turned something as ordinary as walking down the sidewalk into a perilous undertaking. Schools were frequently closed and curfews were strictly enforced, which severely limited Audrey's access to social circles and to pursue education. All really important things, well, important social things, developmental things when you're a preteen and young teenager. In 1942, her family was further scattered when her uncle Otto was murdered by Nazi troops and buried in a mass grave. One of her half-brothers was sent to a labor camp, and her other half-brother, seeing what happened to his sibling, then went on the run to not have the same fate. Ella moved the family members she had left to the small village of Velp, which, though smaller than Arnhem, a smaller town, was unfortunately more of a hub of Nazi activities. Now, if her mother, at this point in time, if her mother had any sort of lingering sympathies for the Nazis, they were buried with Uncle Otto. So, like, the moment her family became affected, if she was even a pro-Nazi up to that point, like, it was definitely done then. And soon Audrey's family joined the Dutch resistance in Velp. Audrey's contribution wasn't just about risking her life for the cause, because it's all dangerous work, even as a child. It was also about maintaining hope and morale in those dark times. So let's talk about the Dutch resistance. A large handful of Nazi-occupied or fascist countries at that time had their own underground resistance groups. Some you may have heard of more than the others, like the French, the Polish, or Jewish resistances. The Dutch resistance is typically described as largely, there were some factions that were not, but largely nonviolent, and focused their efforts more on hiding Jews and creating and spreading anti-Nazi propaganda, acts of sabotage, those sorts of things. Whereas the French resistance, just to give another example for comparison's sake, was more actively involved in military operations, sabotage, and the gathering and passing along of critical intelligence. So the French resistance was a little more involved in terms of more direct with their efforts, in terms of like direct with the military.
I would have definitely been a part of the sabotage group, without a doubt. That's when my talents would have shone brightly.
Hey, everyone's doing their part. I should say everyone's doing their part. Like some people are doing their part. So you could be a part of the sabotage group.
Yeah, you just got to put that younger sibling menace energy to good work.
Right. They're like, we need all the younger siblings.
Yeah.
In the sabotage group.
That's the sabotage group over there.
Yeah. Yep.
None of us have matching socks.
Oldest in like planning and organization. But youngest, they go in the sabotage group. in Velp, even though, as I mentioned, there was this high concentration of Nazi activity, as in like there was an SS headquarters there and everything. Like it was like, oh no, like we thought we're going to a smaller town and there's more of them here. No, the resistance was very much alive and well in this town, and it was under the direction of the local doctor, Dr. Visserthoofd. Hoofd. There we go, Dr. Visserthoofd. I'm really trying to impress our friends in the Netherlands right now. We have a lot of listeners there. I'm like, don't mess it up, don't mess it up. So the good doctor, learning of young Audrey's 4 years as a ballerina for the Arnhem Ballet, encouraged her to continue her dancing, but this time as a form of entertainment to lift spirits and help fill the coffers for the Dutch resistance. Now, during the early days of Nazi occupation, musicians and artists would participate in Zwarte Avonden, or Black Evenings. Oh, did I do okay? Zwarte Avonden. Black Evenings in English, to help them earn money after Nazis forbade anything fun, basically the arts and any sort of creative fun. If it wasn't from their own Kulturkamer,
Yeah.
Kulturkamer, the Nazi Union of Artists,
Right.
their own like little social culture union.
It's like,
so they can play Wagner all day long and whatever.
Exactly. It's like, it's not like funny isn't the right word, but I just have to like extra roll my eyes that not only were the Nazis just like shitty because of the obvious reasons, but they're like also no having fun. Like they didn't even just let you have like art or music or anything. They're like, no, not that either. Like, no, not only will we like take away your family members that we've deemed less than humanity and tell you what to do, and beat the crap out of all of you when you resist, and shoot and kill people on sight that we don't like because we can and no one can tell us no. But like, it's like just an extra layer to the shittiness.
It is. No, I understand exactly what you're saying, because Nazis are so loathsome and all
they're like
and all
micromanaging as well.
Yeah, in all the ways, but they're also like they Nazi needles. They're just nope, not that thing, not this thing, not. And the more you like kind of learn like in these aspects like this, where you're like, oh, they had something for, like, we even talked about it's something for everything. Sorry, I should finish that sentence. But we even talked about that a little bit with like the Lipizzaner rescue.
Yes. Yeah.
It's like we have
you can't even have
horses, you know, like we have to be this side, and then only we can have them, and you know, so and it's just like, oh my God, grow up.
It's like to such a degree that it's like, but that's totalitarianism, isn't it? That's tyranny, that's fascism, like that's what it is right there. Yeah. So extra layer of shittiness on the shit sandwich under the shit regime.
And then it's got to be what we say is okay. Like, it's got to be our music and our art. And
I mean, at least you got Beethoven. Okay. Actually, maybe you didn't.
Maybe not. I don't know.
He was German.
He was German, but
not necessarily Nazi approved.
Yeah, exactly. So the Zwarte Avonden, as I mentioned, these Black Evenings, they were used to help earn money back for non-Nazi approved artists, which were most of the people, you know, right? So that would help earn them money because they couldn't work anymore. But as
anybody not labeled as Wagner,
right? But as the war went on, however, these events were typically used to raise money in support for those sheltering the tens of thousands of Jews and other people hiding across the Netherlands. So it's used to help support the Dutch resistance and help support the hiding in these systems that they had in place. The sort of like, they almost kind of had like this like underground railroad of sorts, you know, which a lot of resistances do, you know, like secret ways that they're like, here's the map, right? We can get you out, find this spot, you'll be safe there, kind of thing. And that was what the Dutch resistance was really good at doing. So the money went to these efforts, and they were known as Black Evenings because the windows were blacked out so people couldn't see in. Ha, Nazis, take that. Audrey's family first became involved in these Zwarte Avonden on April 23rd, 1944, or at least that's the first one that there's documentation showing her family at. At these Black Evenings, Audrey would choreograph little ballet recitals in which her friend would softly play the piano and her mother would make her costumes. Yeah, you don't want to be too loud. And here's what Audrey herself said about her involvement. This is from a Time magazine article. I did indeed give various underground concerts to raise money to the Dutch resistance movement. I danced at recitals, designing the dances myself. I had a friend who played the piano, and my mother made the costumes. They were very amateurish attempts, but nevertheless, at the time, when there was very little entertainment, it amused people and gave them an opportunity to get together and spend a pleasant afternoon listening to music and seeing my humble attempts. Hmm. The recitals were given in houses with windows and doors closed, and no one knew that they were going on. Afterwards, money was collected and given to the Dutch underground. Now, something that I think is important to point out, and I kind of alluded to this a little bit earlier, and it's just something I've only learned through my research. It's that being a part of the resistance, any resistance in any way, was at this time was a very, very small part of the population. And I think there's this sort of patriotic thought, or maybe like this just anti-Nazi, like, oh, the whole world came together to stand up against the Nazis. And it's like,
Yeah.
well, there's
We have
maybe
this idea
in
that
their hearts.
everybody was working underground to do something. Like,
Yeah.
oh, I'll run this over to the neighbors because they need flour because they have the extra people hiding in their attic and stuff. It wasn't like that at
Mm-hmm.
all. You didn't tell your neighbors anybody was there because your neighbors could turn you in.
Mm-hmm.
So there was a lot of distrust. There, it's not a safe time. It's not a good time. Being in the resistance was a big deal because it was not necessarily accepted by your peers.
Mm-hmm. So, and I think that's something I kind of assumed, that not that everyone was involved, but there was some sort of resistance in some way, or active defiance. And I was realizing through this that not every Nazi occupied country even had a resistance. Like, it was very, very low in Germany itself, or that there's a large number of people participating in it. Of course, the exact number of people that are going to participate in a resistance is not going to be known. It's not like they're writing everybody's name down and we know an exact number and percentage of the people. But based on documentation that historians do have, the estimates of those who actively participated in organized activities in Western Europe was about 1 to 3% of the population, with a larger percentage active in more passive resistance, like smaller acts of defiance. The Polish resistance is estimated to be greater at about 10 to 15% of the population. And I say that to point out how great the risk was to those who chose not to toe the line and to stand up to Nazis being Nazis, who actually were like, yeah, I'm going to go out past curfew to meet up with somebody and have these like clandestine meetings, or to pass this money or this note on, or to or this active intelligence gathering. So it's there's a lot of risk involved, not only to your person, but like family members and people that you care about. And that's because that's a
Or anyone you know, because if
yeah.
you're outed as a resistance person, fighter,
Mhm.
personnel, they're gonna go to everybody you know and be like, "Did you know?" or
Mhm.
whatever. They're gonna rough them up, or they're gonna take them in with you, or you just got everybody you know shot and killed. You don't know.
Mhm.
They don't. They don't care.
Yeah.
You
And
know.
that's powerful leverage, using your family and people that right? And that. You know how to create fear and everything in people. So, on top of the constant stress of fearing for your life and your well-being and that of your family and friends, then you're also worried about air raids and access to basic necessities like food, fuel,
I was
staying
just gonna
warm.
say most of them are starving and hungry.
And all of these things were experienced by Audrey and her family and the whole town of Velp. The town's bank was commandeered to become a prison to political prisoners. And Audrey said, I mean, talk about leaving a mark. Audrey said that she was walking by it with her mom and she would often hear like really horrible sounds coming out of there. And her mom finally explained to her like, yeah, they're probably torturing people in there. It's a prison. And she was like kind of hit with that information. And she's like, those are things you don't forget. And no, you don't. In addition to her clandestine ballet recitals, Audrey was also herself delivering messages and vital supplies amongst the local members of the resistance. She would also, this is rad, also helped downed Allied pilots because she spoke fluent English. Now, essentially, if you didn't break your legs or break your back, like if you didn't break bones that required for your mobility, you would try and get away, but you were responsible for avoiding capture. Like, you were responsible for yourself, which makes sense. But like, here's your gun,
I mean, what
and
else are you
there
gonna
you
do?
go.
But
Right.
yeah.
Local Dutch badasses, because that's the only way you can describe these brave souls, would seek out these downed planes. So if they saw the planes go down, they're like, right, I got to go get to them. And these areas were often, I mean, outside the towns themselves, like if it's like woods or a field, they're often forbidden to people, right? Like, you weren't allowed to go there in the first place, but they're often also patrolled as well. So it's dangerous to be out at a certain point or a certain time. They would bring these pilots an escape kit, which usually contained a translation of key Dutch and German phrases, a little bit of money if they had some to give, or maybe like a little bit of food if they had some to give, they spare what they can, and a silk map of Europe. And then they would try to like deliver them into the Dutch resistance network, like that underground railroad that I was talking about. They'd be like, okay, let's get you to these people. Here's your map. And they would take what was known as the Freedom Trail over the Pyrenees Mountains and into Spain. Now, Spain is fascist at this point in time. Let's point that out. But at least they were out of the war.
I was gonna say Spain were Nazi sympathizers. I'm not gonna let anybody forget that.
Yeah.
Italy. But
Yep.
and let alone going over mountains to escape. No, thank you.
Yeah. Yep. But that was what they would try to do, is like try to help these pilots out as best they can so they wouldn't be captured. So the work was in and of itself dangerous. If you got caught, it was, I mean, certain imprisonment, if not maybe, shot on the spot or torture, to give up.
I was gonna say, I'd be
on the
surprised if
resistance.
they even let you leave. I figure they just shoot you right there, but
Or
if you're
torture
lucky.
to give up more
Yeah.
information on the resistance, right?
I'd rather get shot on the spot.
Right. And you'd rather
Put
at
that out
that
there.
point. Yeah. Being a young teenager was an asset to Audrey, because Nazis typically ignored kids. There was, or at least in the town, I don't know how it was like everywhere, but in this case, they were ignoring the kids because there was this idea of like, what's that kid going to do? What's that cute little girl doing? And like, look at her in her little, their little flowers. And that was something she would do. She'd be out, like, there's a story of her meeting up with the pilot and then like getting the escape kit to him, knowing that there's soldiers, Nazi soldiers coming, and she's like, I'm just picking flowers, and they come up and they're starting to question her, and she keeps her cool, and she just is like, and she's so cute, right? And she's Audrey Hepburn, and she like hands him a flower, like, I'm just picking flowers, and they're like, get out of here, kid. It's dangerous, but she was the person who could speak, not the person, but she could, because she could speak fluent English, and because being a kid, it kind of got her out of some trouble, because Nazis were less likely to pay attention to what she was doing. But being that she was a child and therefore still growing, malnutrition really affected her and the town of Velp, but particularly the children of the town. And it meant that she was not only frequently hungry and scavenging for any sort of food, anything edible that they could find, but that the effects of malnutrition led to chronic health issues that she would have with her for her life, including anemia, edema, and respiratory problems. Now, here we go. Let's fast forward in time a little bit. As great as D-Day ultimately was in terms of liberation for Europe and like, getting Allied troops in there to like get in there and fuck some shit up, right? Like, as good as it ultimately was, it made things worse at first for a lot of people, for the Dutch, because, well, especially the people in Western Netherlands. With the Allied forces landing at Normandy on D-Day, the Nazis stopped sending food to the Western Netherlands and close to that Western front, causing what became known as the Hunger Winter, which lasted from the latter half of 1944 until the liberation in late spring of
I was going to say,
1945.
you're stuck until American troops get to you, because they're not reopening that line anytime soon.
People were eating really anything that they could find. Tulip bulbs is one of them, like roots and stuff, digging up roots.
Yeah.
And it meant that, the entire region, or like that entire area of the country, as well as the people of Velp, were hungry.
Yeah.
There were some humanitarian efforts which mitigated things a little, but still people were scrounging for anything that they could find. And that included Audrey's family. So that also does not help that malnutrition.
Right. I mean, if there's no food,
right.
Like, there just isn't enough to go around.
Yeah. One day after the constant sound of bombs and shells. English could be heard being spoken, and the smell of tobacco filled the air. And Canadian troops, yay, Canada! Ta-da!
There's our intersection this week. Oh, Canada.
My home and
Is it
native land.
right? Like,
Sorry, guys.
someone found that weird that I knew their national anthem. I was like, have you
Great
ever
national.
watched a hockey game? Like,
Yeah.
they're our neighbors, dog. And they're like, do you know Mexico's? I was like, no, but I can hum it. So there.
Got that going for me. So Canada, yay Canada, the Canadian troops are marching through Velp, liberating the village, and that's where she asks for her first cigarette. After the war, Audrey's family moved to Amsterdam. Moved to Amsterdam. It's also the Amsterdam, so she could continue her dancing.
Not to be confused with lesser known Amsterdam.
Right, exactly. We need the only Amsterdam we've got here. Not New Amsterdam, which was New York, right? History lesson. Anyway, do you know that? You're muted, by the way.
I know I am, but like you said that, I was like, I had no fucking idea. Is it
New
really?
Amsterdam. Yeah, New Amsterdam was settled by a large Dutch population. So, yeah. Before it was
What?
New York. Yeah.
Look at that.
Yeah, you can put that in your pocket.
Gosh, you learn something new every day, everybody.
Yeah, high tales of history, everyone. Bringing that fresh knowledge to you. Here we are. So Audrey's family, they moved to the Amsterdam so she could continue her dancing. And that brought her to the London in England, where she became a model and joined the Ballet Rambert Company. Unfortunately, as much as our dear Audrey loved ballet and wanted to pursue the art form as a career, being malnourished during war years meant that the chronic illnesses she developed weakened her just enough that she would have been unable to be the prima ballerina that she wanted to be. So she turned to fully get into acting instead, which is a blessing for all of us, really. It's really, we've all won here in this story.
We didn't miss out. She's done just fine.
Yeah, we really got the long end of the stick there. So she had some roles in various stage productions and some small bits in film. And she had her big break on a Broadway play, the production of Gigi in 1951. And soon Hollywood takes notice because she's great. She changed her name to Audrey Hepburn. And for us mere mortals, we were gifted with classics such as Roman Holiday, Breakfast at Tiffany's, My Fair Lady, Charade, Sabrina, like all these different movies that she was in. She had this very specific combination of elegance and vulnerability and strength. Like she had this like really like perfect blend of these things. And she brought all of that to her roles. And her talent was recognized very early in her film career. In fact, so early in her Hollywood film career, her first starring role was in Roman Holiday alongside the late great Gregory Peck. And it won her, that first starring role won her a Academy Award for Best Actress. No big deal, right?
Not too shabby.
Not too shabby. And I also want to give some flowers to Mr. Gregory Peck for not only being so handsome, good for you, buddy, who, unlike a lot of Hollywood's leading men at this time, was a genuinely nice guy. And one can find many anecdotes on how much of a righteous dude he was, you know.
That's awesome.
And
it's so rare in that business as well. So I'm glad you kind of stopped and pointed that out.
Right. And it's because this is great because, again, no one had really heard of her at this point. Like, she's not a star. He's the star. And he sees her in Roman Holiday and he...
Not anymore. She's not.
No,
he's not.
Well, that's what he basically said. He's like, she's got to get top billing right alongside me. Her name's got to be in the same size font. Like, she's going to be a star. And if those things are not done, we're all going to look like a bunch of jerks. So he actually said, you've got to change that because she'll be a big star and I'll look like a big jerk.
Wow.
Mm-hmm. And Peck and Hepburn were lifelong friends, you know, from that.
For good reason, obviously. Like you said, he's pretty righteous.
He's a cool dude. Hepburn retired from acting at the top of her game in 1967, only appearing in a few more small roles after that. She spent her post-acting years with family and friends and committed herself to humanitarian work, which is what her, like, people think first off like actress Audrey Hepburn, but the majority of her years were really spent in her humanitarian work and using her star power to shine a light on that. Audrey's wartime experiences left an indelible mark on her. Indelible, a word that I've never used before of my own volition. I just thought the thesaurus could help me out today on that. So there it is.
It's used
Indelible.
in Balto.
Hmm.
And it's on the plaque of which should be Togo. Check out that episode. Don't know what number it is, but if you look for Togo,
Put it in the show
you'll see
notes.
it.
Okay.
But on that plaque in the middle of New York Central Park.
Yeah.
Hello,
Mm-hmm.
the park. Like the Amsterdam, which is apparently named after the Amsterdam in the New York of the Central Park. It says the indelible spirit of the sled dog. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Just gonna put that out. Sorry. You know how, again, you were talking about those moments that stick out to you? I'll never forget that section of the movie. Because listen, it might not have been accurate, but it was fucking good.
Well, you know what? That's very interesting then that I have chosen indelible it just ties to that memory there for you. There we go. Indelible. And having firsthand experience of the horrors of war on children, you know, what that does to kids, having experienced that herself, she spent her time doing extensive work with UNICEF and the United Nations Children's Fund. She traveled extensively, visiting some of the most impoverished and war-ravaged areas of the world, including, but not limited to, Ethiopia, Bangladesh, and Vietnam. She would advocate for immediate aid and use her star power to bring the world's attention to the needs and the basic human rights of people in these areas, but especially for children. Her philanthropic efforts were recognized globally, and she was awarded the Presidential Medal of Freedom in 1992, which is the highest civilian honor in the United States, alongside the Congressional Gold Medal. Here we go. There's a little flowery ending for you guys. You ready? Love Audrey. Love her. I smile every time I see her. I think she's fantastic. But her story, especially those of the early years, and how that affected and shaped the woman that she became and the things that she did with the rest of her life, is a testament to the strength of the human spirit. That even in the darkest of times, acts of bravery and kindness can light the way. From her early life in occupied Europe to her contributions to the Dutch resistance, Audrey's early years were marked by bravery, resilience, and an unwavering commitment to her values. Audrey Hepburn's legacy extends far beyond her film career. It is deeply rooted in her wartime heroism and her enduring commitment to humanitarian causes. So, hip, hip, hooray, Audrey Hepburn and the Dutch resistance.
Definitely.
Yeah.
And Laurel got her women's history in there as well.
I get my women's history. You know, I get a little bit of spy stuff, you know, resistance. Oh, resistance and underground stuff is always really fun. And it's Audrey Hepburn. I mean, everyone loves Audrey. And Audrey was not the only celebrity or big name that you might know that was connected to clandestine activities and operations. Wink, wink, doot, 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 doot. Spy stuff. Anyway, that was my spy code. Hire me, CIA.
Not if you still want a soul.
Right. Yeah. No, they don't want me. She's not the only celebrity that you would know and recognize. In fact, children's author Roald Dahl, Harry Houdini, Chef Julia Childs, she's fantastic, and a couple of other actors as well. We're all part of different kinds of efforts for intelligence or the resistance and different spy activities during World War II. And so our Half-Baked episode is actually going to focus on some of those stories. Roald Dahl, Harry Houdini, Julia Child. I'll throw a couple extra ones in there. We're going to do a little rundown of a few other celebrities. And so you'll find that on our Patreon. So you got to join the Best Buds Club. Come on over. Come on in, boys. The water is fine. Just come on over. Join the Best Buds Club. We would love to have you hanging out over there for more spy stories. And also, I'm going to be doing another historical movie. So I did Outlaw King recently, which was a lot of fun. So I get to like sit with my little tiny microphone and snacks and a bowl of weed and make commentary on blind reactions of movies that I'm watching. So the one that I'm doing also for this story is The Catcher Was a Spy about Mo Berg. There we go. Who was a catcher and did some highly high level intelligence and secret agent sort of stuff for the United States during World War II regarding the atomic bomb.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Hey, we
Yeah.
mentioned that earlier.
So I'm going to be watching. I'm actually watching that movie tonight. So please come and join us again at Patreon in the Best Buds Club. So come on over. We're going to get real high tonight and watch Paul Rudd. But I'm looking forward to it. Should be a good time. And I would love for you to come and hang out with us when that goes up in the next week, next Friday, just to give the Best Buds a little something to tide them over until we're back again in 2 weeks for season 4, episode 3, episode 90.
What?
We're getting there, episode 90, and we'll be back for October then at that point. I've got some spooky history for October.
Best month of the whole year.
Be back. Love it. Live it. Love it. Be back. We want you back.
Pumpkin spice it.
Pumpkin spice it. So in the meantime, folks, get money, get high, give love, and
Vive la resistance.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.